everybody? It's Daniel, aka FloppyPENGuinn, and I'm here to go over this. This is called an oil pattern graph, and I want to kind of go more in depth than one of my previous videos, which you can check out on your screen now in the corner. I created my own oil pattern and tested it. So today, we're going to be looking at this graph, this sheet of paper in depth and kind of going over it. We're going to do this one, which is a typical house shot type pattern, versus red square, which is the complete opposite, where it's the flattest pattern that I know of that is 40 feet long. So looking at this pattern, we have the name up here, Kegel Recreation Series Easy Street. So you can go to kegel.net and go under oil patterns, and feel free to look this up for yourself. It's a recreation pattern. So anyways, the oil pattern distance where we'll start, 39 feet. So that means that the oil from the foul line to the 39-foot mark, which is past halfway down the lane, will be oiled. And then the reverse brush will drop at 34 feet. So all that means is the reverse drop is getting ready. The reverse brush, on the way back towards the foul line, that the machine is getting ready to put down oil, and that brush is dropping so that it is ready to apply oil as well. And the oil per board is 50 UL for this pattern. That is just simply the pressure of the tank on the oiling machine. So I'm not going to give that a whole ton of attention today, but that's just the pressure. You can adjust the pressure and it makes the volume be more or less, depending on the higher pressure makes more, the lower pressure makes less oil. So for the forward oil total, we have 12.8 milliliters on this pattern, and we have a reverse oil total of 9.6 milliliters. So forward oil is all the oil that is applied whenever the machine first starts out from the foul line to the pin deck as it goes down the lane for the first time. The reverse oil total, on the other hand, is when the machine is on its backwards pass from the pin deck to the foul line. So all this means is that this amount of oil right here totals up to 12.8 milliliters, because this is the forward oil, and then the reverse oil, which is this box here, totals up to 9.6 milliliters on the way back to the foul line from the pin deck. So now the volume oil total is just simply these two numbers added together. If you do 12.8 plus 9.6, you get 22.4. And the forward boards crossed, 256 boards. That just simply means how many boards that it's going across here on the forward passes. Don't pay that really any attention, doesn't have anything to do with reading a graph. And the reverse as well, just the reverse side of it. And the total boards crossed is those two numbers added together. That does not matter a whole ton, not gonna lie. There's very little that you can do with that information to know how to play a pattern at all. So if we come over here to the right side, we'll do this next. So as we see here, we have four versions of our oil here: forward, reverse, combined, and buff. Now, buff is more of an older lane graph term. They don't really put that on any of our current lane graphs, so we can kind of take that out of play here. But forward oil is this bright, like greenish blue that you see here on the bottom right and bottom left, and on the edges. The reverse oil is this lighter blue that you're going to see across in here, and then the combined is this navy blue that's this square in the center here. So what's the difference? Well, forward oil, once again, the oil that's put down as it goes down the lane towards the pin deck on the first pass. Forward oil is mostly just what's going to create kind of the shape of the pattern. And so as we see here, the forward oil is going to be all in here. You just can't see it because it's under the combined, because that means reverse was put down on top of it. So that combined oil is, of course, has the forward oil underneath, and then whatever that you put down on the forward pass that gets covered on the reverse pass becomes combined oil. So all this navy has to have forward underneath it. Whereas the reverse oil is all in here, and it is all right here in this big chunk of navy as well, of course, because if you put the forward and the reverse together, you get combined. So the reverse oil, as it's put down on the reverse pass from the pin deck to the foul line whenever the machine applies the oil, that creates the playability of the pattern basically. So typically you're going to see more forward oil than you will reverse, but not always. Sometimes patterns do have more reverse oil than forward oil, but the reason is because the forward oil creates the shape of the pattern and allows the oil to hold a little bit longer usually than the reverse oil, whereas reverse oil tends to typically, not always, but typically kind of go quicker whenever you're bowling on it and not stay for as long. And of course that can depend on the type of oil and stuff like that, so do keep that in mind. But next we'll go over this big rectangle here. So this can look tricky at first, but I promise you it's very simple to understand, and I'm going to break it down for you guys. So we're going to start in the center here. These two are in the center. Basically these are what's going to determine your ratio. So this rectangle here, this smaller rectangle, is what your ratio is. So all that means is it's a ratio of how much oil is in one spot compared to another. So 1.02, as we see here, we're going to round that to 1. So this is 1, and let's go to this 3.53. So as we see, this pattern is symmetric. Some patterns are asymmetric, where it's different on the left side versus the right side. This one is completely symmetric because it's just like your regular house shot. So as we see here, it is 3.53 to 1. What does that mean? Well, that means from the 8 board to the 12 board on both sides that it is a 3.53 to 1 ratio. Or there is 3.53 times as much oil in the middle as there is from the 12 board to the 8 board on both sides. Now if we look here, this is the outside ratio. So this is from the 7 board to the 3 board. So basically what people would consider this pattern is a 12 to 1 ratio. An extremely high ratio, which just means that there is 12 times as much oil in the center part of the lane as there is on the outside, which is a very high ratio. A lot of house shots are typically 10 to 1, but this one is 12 to 1. So it's a very, very high ratio pattern. That usually makes it a lot easier because you've got a lot of hold in the middle and a lot of hook on the outside. And that's what typically creates things like this to be a house shot. So continuing on, let's go to these boxes real quick. So these boxes don't matter as much whenever you're trying to read how to play the lanes. And in fact, I will preface this with, whatever I say here, this pattern can play very differently anywhere in the world. So don't take what I say for a golden standard, but instead I just want to teach how to kind of read this and give you more insight to what exactly you're seeing on the lane if you don't understand this at all. So as we see here, it has a 2 left to 2 right at 2 loads. So all that means is every pattern starts with a 2 to 2, by the way, on the reverse and the forward. All that means is that it's got 2 times that it's going to go across the lane, it's going to go at 18 speed, and that it's going to go from the 2 board to the 2 board, from the left and on the right. So then it goes to the 10 board and the 10 board, so it goes from the 10 board on the left side to the 10 board on the right side, which is this right here, excuse me. And that is going to be 4 times that it does that. So 1, 2, 3, 4 at 18 speed. And then as we continue on, it goes to 13 and 13. And that's going to be our last forward pass that puts oil. And it's going to be 4 times. So it's going to go from the 13 to the 13 like this 4 times. And as it goes down the lane. And then it's done after that putting oil until the reverse pass. I know that because it says 0 loads here for these. So that creates a bunch of oil in the middle, as we see from the 13 to 13 board. Same thing here. We're going to see it go in backwards order now because remember you're going towards the foul line, so you're going in reverse. 14 to 14 2 times. So that's going to be probably this block here. So 1, 2 right there in that 14 to 14. And then the 13 to 13 is going to be in here. It's going to do it 4 more times. So that's putting a lot of oil in that area. And then 12 to 12 and 11 to 11, and it's going to keep going down until it gets to that spot and at 14 speed, and then it's going to keep going, and then the machine's going to finish because it's not going to put any oil down for this load. Okay, so now that we kind of have that covered, I want to go over red square. So this is Kegel's red square. This is a 40-foot dead flat pattern. It is a recreation, if you will, of Bear, which was the old Bear at least, which was 40 feet and dead flat on the PBA Tour. They don't use it anymore. It's kind of unfortunate because I liked watching the grinds, but also I hated bowling on it, and I hate bowling on this pattern, not gonna lie, just because it's difficult. But it's good to have these because the sport needs a level where people are required to actually hit their target, and that helps a lot with the integrity of the sport as well. But I'm not going to get into that. I'll step off my soapbox for now. So oil pattern distance is 40 feet long, as we see here. The reverse brush is at 35 feet, and that just means that the volume kind of varies on the pump, so whatever they have it set to. But the forward oil total at this setting is 15.725. The reverse oil is 9.435. Combine those together and you get a 25.16 milliliters. Now, as we see here, this uses fire and ice. That's not what we use at Fusion Alley, at the center that I bowl at. But you can kind of pay attention to the type of conditioner you use. Like we use Kegel Curve, and there's a lot of different oils out there. And so just kind of look at what they're using, if they change that at all. So all you're going to see here, as we were just going over the loads, I'll kind of start here. All you're going to see here is 2-to-2 loads. All this means is that the pattern is completely flat. So in other words, nothing changes for where the oil is applied. The only thing that changes is how much oil is applied every time. As you see, it goes from 3 loads of 2-to-2 to 2 loads to 2 loads to 3 loads, and then 0 just means that it quits putting down oil for that pass. And then on the reverse pass, so on the way back, it's a 2-to-2 0, so then a 2-to-2 3, a 2-to-2 3, and a 2-to-2 0. So that just means this chunk right here is what that I'm talking about right there. Because there's no distinct spots of forward oil that you see, that's because it all gets covered by the reverse, and the combined oil is where that is then. So all the forward gets covered by the reverse and makes the combined oil. As you can see, this would be kind of like our buff from earlier, sort of. But instead, it is just counted in the reverse oil category just because of the way that the machine does it on the reverse pass. So this is going to be super simple. The ratio is 1-to-1 no matter where that you look on the lane. Here's why. Because there is just as much oil on the outside as there is on the inside. The amount of oil is the exact same across the lane horizontally. And that is what is important about this pattern, and that's what makes it plays so difficult, is because you have the same amount of oil here as you do here in the middle. So if you want to play up the 10 board, okay, let's say that you're trying to play up 10 and you're hitting pocket every time that you hit the second arrow, the 10 board, okay? Let's say that you miss left and you hit the 11 board. Your ball is going to react the exact same as it would on the 10 board, but now you're 1 board left, so you're going to go high. Whereas on the 9 board, if you miss right to the 9 board, which is just 1 board miss, by the way, if you miss right and hit the 9 board, your ball is going to react the same as it was the 10 board, and it's not going to hook enough, and it's going to go light. So that's what's so tough about this pattern, is even if you miss one single board on this pattern, it makes it very, very difficult to strike in the beginning. Once you break it down, if you're good at breaking this pattern down, then you can create a bump out here to the right that could possibly lead to higher scoring. But then again, it is very difficult, because if you miss more marginally and you miss like 3 or 4 boards left off your hand, you're going to hit basically the 4-pin in the face. Or if you miss 3 or 4 boards right off your hand and it's not broken down for that, then you're going to be hitting like the 6 or the 10 pin in the face, which is tough. This pattern is not easy by any means. And as we see down here, it is completely level, completely flat, as you would say, all the way across here in this rectangle area, because we see the same amount of oil put on every single board across the lane. The only difference that I will say is that the 1 board is never oiled, and so there's never oil on the 1 board, so that's the only reason why there's not a stick here as well, as we see with all these other ones, is because there's never oil applied on the 1 board. That doesn't mean that you can automatically play the 1 board. It depends on like your lane service and where you're at and stuff like that. It doesn't mean you know that you can, but it just means that the one board is completely dry. So if you are that accurate, then you absolutely can, which I've loved doing in the past. But it is very difficult, especially on something like red square where you have no miss room regardless. So the way that I would recommend playing this pattern is to break down with as much surface as possible for as much time as possible in practice. Break down just outside of that first arrow and then try and use that as a bump so that it hooks a little bit whenever you miss to the right. Does it always work? No. But it does give you at least a chance and a game plan going in that can tell you what exactly you should do. And it depends on your lane surface, the type of oil, and all that fun stuff as well. But I just wanted to give you guys an overall insight as to how to read these pattern sheets so that you at least know what's going on. And because you kind of see this at first, and I was this way at first too. I was like, whoa, these things are wild. Like, there's a lot of information on here. I didn't understand it. I'm still learning a lot about it, actually. Ever since I started developing my own patterns a couple months ago, I've taken that as a huge learning experience, as I said in my other video, and I'm trying to be able to convey that information so that everybody is able to learn in their own fashion and see, oh, this means this, or this means this. This is why that my ball did this, maybe, or something like that along those lines. Just so I'm able to convey that information to you guys and kind of teach you guys about this, because I find it super interesting myself and I want to learn more as well. That's why I think it's important for me to teach so that I can learn. So if you have any questions or any additional comments, or if you feel like I said anything that was out of place, be sure to leave it in the comment section below. I read all those. And leave a like too if you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it. And definitely subscribe for future content as well, because I've got a lot of videos coming up throughout December and January that are going to be great. I already know it. So just be sure to subscribe below, and I'll see you guys later. Have a great day.